Got some good hits. Not bad.
What's up, folks? Welcome back to the channel. So it's the dog days of summer. We're going to talk about a really sneaky trend that I've picked up over the last couple of years, bass fishing, where you can catch really big bags of bass. And we're not just talking about 1 or 2 bites here. You can catch 20 or 30 bass, no problem on this type of pattern. You're going to be using a bladed jig. You're going to be fishing grass a lot of times, but not exclusively grass. This really applies for any lake. So if that interests you, you want to catch some bass during the heat of this summer on a bladed jig, stay tuned for this video. All right, so where are you going to start? Really, it's not just about looking for grass. It's not just about looking for any structure. Really, in the summertime, one of the key things that I look for is bluegill beds. If you can find bluegill beds, keep in mind not all of them are going to be hot, so you're not necessarily going to catch fish on all of them, but there's going to be certain bluegill beds that are absolutely magical. Take a look at this picture. This really breaks down really well what the grass line looks like on a side image and how the bluegill bed is going to stack up next to it. It's often going to be around a sand flat or rock or some other type of structure. I often will see these right at the edge or running underneath docks. So keep that in mind. Another place you're going to look is channel swings. So anywhere there's a creek and you know where the creek channel is in the lake, you're going to be looking for those swings in that channel. A lot of times the bluegill beds are going to be there. If you see reeds or you see cattails or anything like that up on the bank, another thing to look for is the cuckleburs or the the little spiny things. They grow up, basically thistles, anything with nettles on it. All of those grow in hard bottom. And that's typically offshore where your bluegills beds are going to relate to. So if you look for those things, it kind of cut down some of your time on the water and where you're searching for. And just keep in mind that it could be specific to your lake on where they're setting up. But those are some trends that I've seen. All right, so now that we've found a spot and you know what you're looking for, when you get there, how are you going to approach it? That's going to be really a key to success here. You're not just going to get there and start haphazardly making casts. I broke down here visually when you're in one of these spots, what I'm doing, how I'm making casts, and what I'm looking for. Check this out.
Where are we going to start fishing? Well, if you look at my contour map here, you can see I've got lots and lots of squiggledy lines there. And if you focus on that screen, you can see there's a bend there, that blue bend. That's a creek bed, that's a channel. There's actually a smaller one. It's hard to see because there's so many lines on there. There's a smaller one where it Y's right there off to the left. But any of those bends, or especially right there where it splits, you'll notice I've got a couple of waypoints there. You probably can't tell. There's some fish waypoints where I've caught there. Those are all going to be areas you're going to focus on. So I'm sitting in 4 foot of water. This channel out here to my right is about 10 foot. If you look over here to my bank, I'm actually right off of a main point here. This is a main lake point, even though it's kind of in the back of this creek. And I've got a grass line that's going right here. And it makes a little bit of a point that's coming out right here. You really, if you were sitting here with me in person, you could see it more. Really, that stick right there is kind of the tip of a point within a point, because the point is over here where this other stick is. Then there's another little rounded area right here that's creating another point. So I'm going to make a cast. Now this first cast is kind of exploratory, so it's probably only about 3 to 4 foot deep right there, because it only took maybe a second and a half for it to hit bottom. I've got a 1/2 ounce jackhammer on, so that'll vary depending on how heavy your bait is, how thick your line is, how far out you cast. All that stuff will change how long it takes to sink. But that first one was pretty shallow. So now I'm going to go out here to my right. I'm going to make a cast to the right. Now I'm going to see how long it takes. Okay, so that's taken 3,004. That probably took about 4 seconds, maybe a little longer to hit bottom. So I think I threw it right dead into the channel. Because I mean, it drops off steep into this channel back here. It's a pretty deep little creek channel. Now, just keep in mind, it doesn't have to be a deep one. Any depression It can be 6 inches for that matter that's in an area, especially just depending on how deep it is in certain areas. If it's real flat and there's no changes and then all of a sudden there's a 6-inch change, you're gonna wanna focus on that area.
All right, so how do we retrieve the bait? That's going to be really a key on how you get your bite. Bladed jig is one of those baits that you can throw it out and you can reel it straight back to you. Just a straight retrieve of certain speeds and you can get bit on it. No doubt, probably first year I fished the thing, that's pretty much exclusively how I'd fish it until I'd hit some cover and I'd rip it off of it. Really looking back on it, I got most of my bites whenever I was ripping it off of cover. And I actually heard Gerald Swindle make a comment about fishing really a rattle trap. He was saying, you know, hey, if I rip it 100 times back and you're only ripping it once or twice, who's going to get bit more? And, you know, he called it redneck logic, which I can appreciate being a country boy myself, but really the same thing's going to apply for your bladed jigs. A lot of it's going to come down to you imparting action on it, and that's going to be a series of pauses. A lot of times you'll see me pulling the bait back to me and reeling down. Those are creating little flutters and just little changes in motion in the bait. You'll see me move my rod tip from one side to another. Sometimes that's just based on where I'm retrieving it and where I'm trying to keep it. But a lot of times I've noticed when I move my rod, again, that's changing the trajectory of that bait. Just that little change of course will make them trigger and bite it. You have to think about it from a fish's perspective. They're not smart enough necessarily to put everything together, but if something's running in a straight line, it never stops moving in that same speed. How unique is that? I mean, there's nothing in the water column that's going to be doing that. Everything has some erraticness to it, spurts and pauses and darts and everything else in between, right? So it needs to be the same thing whenever you're working your bait. Again, I have a visual here where I spotted a bluegill bed and I catch a fish, so check this out.
All right, this is a good example of bluegill beds. It's kind of hard to see because it's on the edge of a channel here, but see how there's like little dark spots in the middle of all the bright? It's usually more rounded looking whenever you're moving a little faster, but it's right out here just to my right. I mean, matter of fact, the edge of the bluegill bed. Yeah, that's a better looking image now that I'm moving a little bit. There's a fish right there. Okay, so that's exactly what I'm talking about right there, about the bluegill beds. It's nice when I can have a cooperative student here. Oh, did you'll see that?
All right, so let's talk about setup. This is going to be really important to help you get more bites. So starting off, reel, you're going to want a 7-1 ratio reel in my preference. 6-1, 6-4-1, something like that would also work. You want something that's kind of in that mid-range. It's not too fast, but it's also not too slow. You can go down to the 6s during the winter time to slow it down a little bit more because that tends to get you more bites. But you need something that can pick up line. So really I like that 7 all year round because even in the wintertime, fish are going to run at you. You're going to lose some fish if you can't pick up the line fast enough. So 7 ratio is going to be key. Line, I typically use 15-pound fluorocarbon. A lot of guys will use a fluoroliter and they'll use braid. It's not really my preference. I don't like having that extra failure point at a line-to-line knot. I've never had it happen on a fish, but I don't want it to happen on a fish, especially in a tournament. I do a lot of tournament fishing, so that's important to me. I also just like the extra clarity of having an all fluoro. The only time I see fluoro as a disadvantage is if you're in really heavy grass. In that situation, you're forced to go to, in my opinion, just pure braid at that point. It doesn't even matter. If you're in really thick grass, they're barely seeing that bait as it's ripping through there anyway. So just do yourself the service and go ahead and go all braid in that scenario. Rod selection, this is going to be very important. In my opinion, you've got to have a glass rod. You don't have to have this specific one, but this is a dadgum good chatterbait rod. This is an XP Champion, Champion XP by Dobyns. This is the 736 CB glass. This has got a fast tip on it. It's actually an extra fast tip. And at the end of the day, this heavy backbone is really what's helping you rip it through. But the softness of the glass And really that flex of that rod and the way it loads up is how you're keeping a lot more fish pinned. So if you go to a glass rod, especially that specific one, that 736 Dobyns, you're not going to be disappointed. I used forever a composite rod, a 7.6 fast action, and it works. I still use that same rod. But the challenge is you're going to lose a lot more fish. I mean, I fish them side by side all the time, and I always catch more fish on that rod than I do on my composite rod. The only difference is really just the feel of the two, and I had used the other one forever. So it's comfortable to me, but it's not really the right tool for the trade. So if y'all do that, that's going to really help y'all maximize the bites that you get. You're going to get more of them in the boat. You're going to have an overall better experience. That 7 ratio is going to get you more fish in for the power of it and just the speed of it, forcing you to reel. Now, as far as weight of the bladed jig, a lot of that's going to come down to the depth that I'm fishing. If I'm fishing no more than say 12, maybe even 15 feet, I'm going to be fishing a 1/2 ounce. And now that's all the way up to about, I'd say 4-ish feet. Even sometimes in 2 foot of water, I'll still throw the 1/2 ounce because of how fast I want to work it. If the water temperature is hot, these fish are typically going to bite it reaction style. I mean, that's a reaction style bait. It's a power bait, so use it that way. The 3/8 ounce will come into play when the fish are super finicky and you just need it to soak a little more. That's typically when the water's colder, so not really applying so much to this video. But hey, there are times even during the summertime that I've seen that little bit more subtle drop will get you some different bites. It won't be the only thing you'll get bit on. I haven't seen that happen yet where the 1/2 ounce wouldn't get bit, but the 3/8 would. But I have gotten some additional bites, and I do think it's just because it's a little bit slower fall, a little bit different look on them, right? Same color bait, by the way. So that's really what I'm doing. As far as the depths, if I go anything deeper than 15 foot, I'm going to go with a 3/4 ounce bladed jig. The same thing would apply. You're going to be fishing shell beds and stump beds and hard spots and things like that. Not so much gill beds. Gill beds typically aren't out in that deep of water unless you're fishing super, super clear water, which we don't have a ton of here in Texas. I hope all this helps. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. If y'all need some more details on anything or you just have any off-the-wall questions that I happen to not cover in this video, I'm happy to answer them as long as they're fishing related. Guys, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. I'm going to continue to put out content like this. It really helps me, as well as putting a thumbs up on this video and leaving a comment. That really helps support me. Totally free for y'all, but it really helps me out a ton. Guys, thank you so much. Stay fishing. Talk to y'all soon.